feel like we can. All right. I don't know what to do with this because I didn't find it really heavily covered with Becker. Lime did. So I don't know. I think we should. I think it's important stuff probably. And I think it might be tucked away somewhere in Becker that I didn't find when I was scanning through it. So I think we'll look at this just to kind of, there is at least one or two really important points with this topic. So section, I really don't. I don't know how much to emphasize it. I'll tell you what is probably the most important thing here, though, because it comes into play. I didn't even have it on here. I guess it's in another section where I had it, but you know, the whole idea of marginal revenue and marginal cost. That's important because that comes up with all the, you know, monopoly and all those four different things. You know, with each of those, it always makes the point that profit maximization occurs when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So I would definitely tuck that away. So it'll probably be in the notes later, but yes. No matter what the market structure. So whether it be monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition, your competition, it doesn't matter. You know, that's always the point where it occurs. So I would definitely tuck that away. That's probably something that'll show up one way or the other on an exam, I would think. And you know, the idea is, you know, marginal. So marginal revenue, it's, you know, the dollar increase in revenue from selling one more additional unit. What do you make by selling one more? And marginal cost is the cost of producing one more. So, you know, if marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, you know, you're producing too much, you should decrease supply. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, you're not producing enough and should increase output. But really the easiest way to think about this, if you really want to think about it at all, this is one of those things you might just memorize and not worry about the why. But this is the point where there's the biggest gap between total revenue and total cost, therefore the biggest income. That's where you can almost think of it as that little cutoff period, like a break-even type thing. I don't know if you would want that, but at that point, you have hit that biggest gap between total revenue and total cost. Move one way or the other, and then you're off a little bit. So yeah, that's the important part here, but backing up a little bit. So, you know, they do mention some concepts that could show up when they talk about the short run. The idea here is, to put it more simply than this, it's a period that's brief enough that a firm can't vary in its fixed costs. You're kind of locked in the short run. That's a way to put it a little more simple than what they've got. But they're calling it the time period where the quantity of at least one input cannot be varied. It's a more difficult way of putting it, I think. But yeah, brief period of time, they can't vary their fixed costs. Long run, though, it's a long enough period where anything can be varied. Nothing is fixed in a long enough run of time, right? So that's the concept there, the short run and long run. It's probably worth making a note of that. You know, all this. Law of diminishing returns kind of explains itself, really, right? output falls as more and more units of inputs are added. As inputs are added to the process, each additional unit does give us increased production, obviously, but at some point, the point of diminishing marginal returns, that increase is smaller with each unit. So the benefit of adding additional units kind of decreases. Too many cooks in the kitchen is the idea. Everybody starts running into each other and they start becoming inefficient. And your returns start to diminish. You get to the point where you're straining all of your stuff. That's really the idea of diminishing returns. Now, as far as all this mess about U-shaped curves, I don't know if that's carrying it too far or not. I think our book mentioned it. I think Blind mentioned it. I didn't see that they mentioned it, so I don't know. But it's really just carrying this idea that we just mentioned just a little farther and saying, hey, if you stick that on a graph, that's what it's going to be, right? You've got costs going down and then eventually kind of going up, marginal average costs going up as well. It's the idea of as you begin, you start to get more and more efficient, and then eventually you get to the point where you're straining all your resources and then you become more inefficient. Right? All those are U-shaped curves. So maybe make a note of that. I don't know if that's too much. But I stuck it on there anyway. That's just all a bunch of words about that because I was trying to over-explain it, I think, because I don't know. I got stuck on it and kept researching it and trying to figure out the best way to put it. And then I finally thought, this is probably not worth even mentioning at all. So I don't know. But I left it on there. So I'm going to say maybe make a quick note of that in your head if you don't already know it from reading all this up there anyway. Okay. Economies of scale is also something to make a note of. I could see any of these terms I could see showing up. Economies of scale is a long-term idea. So, in the long run, it's when economies of scale and diseconomies of scale kind of come into play. Again, it's just kind of picking up on that idea of eventually that economy of scale, you start getting more efficient, you're specializing your labor, you're specializing your equipment, and then eventually you've got chaos starting to kind of set in because you're getting too much and straining your resources, and then you get into diseconomy of scale. So it's all just kind of the same idea over and over. U-shaped curve and diminishing returns and economies of scale and everything. So maybe just a passing knowledge of this would be enough, I think. I don't remember what their questions were. Let's see what we got. Which of the following cost curves does not have a U-shape? That would be our average fixed cost. We kind of know that from our knowledge about how variable and fixed costs behave from our accounting discussion anyway, right? As production goes up, fixed cost on average goes down, right? To a point. Relevant range of all of that, but yeah. And then all of those other things do have a U-shaped curve. Your marginal cost, your average total cost, your variable cost, they all are doing, they're all doing good for a while and then level out and then start kind of going the wrong direction. Number 2, in the long run, if all input factors to a production process are increased by 100%, the total output only increases by 75%. This indicates decreasing returns to scale. And maybe a little bit of a vague question, but the idea they're trying to get across is returns to scale is a long run concept. diminishing returns is more of a short run concept. So that's the idea. According to the law of diminishing returns, which one of the following is correct? A says the marginal output falls as more units of variable input are added to the fixed inputs. That is correct. Right there. Diminishing returns. So your output's not going to increase. So we can rule that one out. C says total output falls as more units of variable input are added. Total output, it's the marginal output that we're kind of focusing on. Marginal out or total output would increase, right? But the marginal output would fall. So there you go. Number 4, which of the following statements regarding periods of analysis is correct? Short run analysis assumes that all inputs can be varied. No, you can't vary stuff in the short run. Long run analysis assumes that all inputs can be varied. That is true. In a long enough period of time, we can vary even our fixed things, right? Number 5, in the long run, a firm may experience increasing returns due to, and again, the whole idea, economies of scale is a long run concept. That is more of a vague question than you get on the CPA exam, I would think. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of here and there on this section. I think there's definitely some important concepts, and we definitely noted those, but I wouldn't go into a tremendous amount of depth on it. Maybe the stuff I highlighted and kind of stop with that. Questions on it? Okay. Market structure. That's kind of fun and easy, right? Okay, so introduction to market structure. So they give us a couple of terms. They're talking about implicit and explicit costs. Implicit costs we could call opportunity costs. That's really what we're talking about. Yeah, I don't think anyone knows that there. I'm not lazy on this section, but whatever. Explicit costs, that's our accounting costs, our expenses. So, we kind of have to shift our minds out of accounting a little bit into econ a little bit, but it's really the same thing. So explicit costs are the actual costs that require actual payments, things we deal with in accounting. Implicit costs are the opportunity costs, not in the accounting records, but things we should definitely consider from an economic point of view, right? So economic profits. I didn't do very well putting this together, did I? Our book does it better than I got up there. So it's so accounting profit would be just revenue minus explicit costs, right? Economic profit would be revenue minus both explicit and opportunity costs, right? And then normal profits, this weird little deal where economic profit equals 0. So there's your terms right there, and it's just kind of a little threshold, I guess, to kind of yeah, you kind of think of it that way. Yeah. So those are the terms they kind of throw at us here. Not a whole lot of meat to this section, I guess. Just those terms, really. And they do give us some questions, and they were a little complicated in a way. Not really, but kind of long. So in this number 1 here, they are wanting us to compute accounting profit. We better be okay with that. And then they're wanting us to compute economic profit, which gets a little complex with this setup. Accounting profit is easy. It is just our revenue of 150 here. Minus our expenses. These are our explicit expenses right here, right? Explicit costs, I guess I should say. Costs that require actual payment of actual money, accounting expenses. So our accounting profit is just simply 150 minus 90, which is 60. Too bad it wasn't 48. We could have answered D and moved along, right? But no. So 60 for our accounting profit. Now, our economic profit is going to be revenue minus those same explicit costs, and then we got to figure out what the implicit costs are. In other words, what's the opportunity cost of this person choosing to abandon what he's doing and do this new thing, right? So economic profit, same deal with the revenue. Same deal with the explicit cost. And then our implicit costs. So in this little scenario, this guy's earning 60 grand a year doing the job that he's about to leave. And he's going to open his own store, and he already has a building to put that store in, but he's renting that thing right now and getting $1,000 per month. So he'd be giving up his $60,000 salary and $12,000 worth of rent income to do this, right? So 150 minus 90 minus 12 is he's losing $12,000 by doing this. So obviously that economic profit is what he would want to base his decision on. Sure, he'd be showing profits on the accounting books, but the reality is better off staying where he is, right? You got to consider those opportunity costs that don't find their way into the records. So C is our answer for this one. That makes sense.
Didn't get that one first time I did it. When I went through this question.
Okay. Yeah, it's long. You know, you get tired of reading it, and it's just like, now I got to go back there and read that thing again and figure it out. Yeah, it's difficult to read. Which of the following equation correctly represents the economic concept of normal profit? So that is the case where this minus this minus this equals 0, right? Where economic profit is 0. So revenue minus explicit minus implicit expenses equals 0. So that is called normal profit. So normal profit occurs at a point where everything is being used efficiently, could not be put to better use elsewhere. Kind of the minimum amount of earnings needed to justify doing the thing. It's a break-even idea, like you said. Yeah. It's just been a normal economic theory. And you know, they use that concept of normal profit when they go way deeper than we need to into describing all this, you know, these, they're like normal profit should occur in conditions of equilibrium and perfect competition, all this stuff. You know, they use this stuff, but it's way deeper than we need, so don't worry about it. All right. Which of the following statements concerning the relationship between alternative concepts of profit is most likely to be correct? You're going to ask a question. A says, from a social perspective, a firm earning a positive economic profit is using its resources completely efficiently. B says, if a firm is just earning a normal profit, it is not earning a positive economic profit. We can stop there, right? And that completely describes it. All this idea of efficient use of resources is about to come up a little bit in what we're doing with these different market structures. We'll hold on to that for a little bit later. Number 4, which of the following is central to determining the nature of market structure in a free market economy? This is the question that you wouldn't get. I mean, it's just kind of, it's just kind of there to walk us through the content, I think. Obviously, all 4 of those strictly has to do with the type of competition. Monopoly, there's no competition. Oligopoly, there's a little bit of competition. Monopolistic competition, there's a lot of competition. That's the whole idea. Which of the following is not one of our 4 common market structures? Socialism is not. So probably not a question we get. But then we get into the real idea of each of these. So these are fairly easy. The highlight, definitely the take home on this is the characteristics of each. That's the heavy hit stuff. And there's so many potential questions that could come from it, but they're all pretty easy. And I think, kind of organize in your head the way you want. But what I do is I visualize kind of the reality of, most of what we deal with is monopolistic competition, right? We can recognize that, and we can recognize the characteristics of it. And then I kind of use that as my baseline and then think about, well, how does a monopoly differ from what we see most of the time? How does perfect competition or pure competition differ from that? How does an oligopoly differ from that? But it's all pretty logical once you kind of see it. Perfect competition, or pure competition, it might be called. Pure or perfect. Our book calls it perfect competition. This is more of a theoretical idea than a reality, but it kind of gives us information about the behavior that could happen, and maybe a standard of comparison for the other things that do actually happen, how they compare to this theoretical idea of perfect, pure competition. This would happen if you had a very, very large number of buyers and sellers. They're all too small to affect the price of a commodity themselves. They all sell homogeneous products or services. In other words, standardized. They all have a substitute. Firms can enter and leave the market at will. Resources can be moved around. They're completely mobile. Buyers and sellers have complete, perfect information, and the government does not set prices. So those are the characteristics of pure or perfect competition. In this theoretical scenario, every firm is a price taker. They have to sell any quantity of its commodity at that market price that is there, and they can't go above it, and they wouldn't go below it. Demand would be perfectly elastic. Any change in price would have a huge impact because everybody else is selling the exact same thing for this exact price. You deviate from that, you're done, right? So the demand curve here would be a horizontal straight line across at that exact market price. So all of that's pretty important stuff. That all of that could be good test questions. All of this could be test questions. Probably this, maybe this. Maybe not so much. Some of this, but this. So check this out. firms will maximize profit when revenue from the last unit sold equals the incremental cost of producing that unit. So there we are saying that again, right? Marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. You'll find that to be a statement we make for all four of these. So you don't have to memorize it, anything different for any of them. They're always maximize profits when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. The rest of this is just kind of beefing up the story a little bit. It's stuff to read and just kind of get your mind right with it. I don't know if there's anything to take to heart or anything. When firms in a perfectly competitive market are making a profit in the short run, more firms will enter the market in the long run. As more firms enter the market, supply increases, market price will fall till all firms break even. It's just more in-depth theory behind why things happen the way we say they will happen here. If there's firms suffering a loss in the short run, some will exit the market, causing the market price to increase until firms break even. Again, more theory that's a little too deep, I think. Market is in equilibrium when market supply equals market demand. All firms are breaking even and there's no profits as a whole, right? There's no product differentiation. They don't sell homogeneous or standardized products. So they all have to focus on innovation in production and distribution and sales processes rather than the good or the service sold. So in other words, their success depends on being the lowest cost producer because they're stuck with a price, they're selling the same product, they can't differentiate it. Again, it's all theoretical stuff, right? So yeah, that might be important. But yeah, it's just characteristics to kind of take note of, none of which is too difficult. So that's pure competition. All right, monopoly. Pretty easy to visualize the characteristics here without trying to commit it to memory. You can reason through it, right? No close substitutes. Nobody can enter, and they can strongly influence price. All makes perfect sense, right? Nothing to learn, nothing to commit to memory, nothing to even study. That should be something that just clicks in your head, right? So before we said in this perfect competition, everybody's a price taker. They're stuck with whatever the market is. A monopolist is a price maker. They have that in there, but they make the price. So, they're the only ones. And, they go into why this could exist. There could be a patent. There could be government action of some sort. There could be a natural monopoly, which would be an idea where it's just such a big undertaking that only one person can, one group or whatever, can logically do that. Or, like they always use utilities as the example. Because, even if two people could do that in my city of Tupelo, you're not going to have two different people running two different sets of water lines. It just doesn't happen. So that would be a natural monopoly. It just naturally occurs. These costs are so high that it'd be hard for some other firm to enter, or there's just a natural restriction to where it'd be useless to try, right? So, term worth noting. So, hey, look at that. There's that again. Firm maximizes profit when marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. We'll have to remember that again. This, I think, showed up in one of your test questions about that marginal revenue curve being below the demand curve. Maybe a little too much. Maybe a little too deep. I don't know. There it is in the notes, just in case. The monopolist demand curve is the industry demand curve. That makes sense, right? Because they are the industry. So the only way to sell one more unit is a lower price. So marginal revenue goes down as each additional unit. So it gets kind of complicated and it may be a little too much. So we won't worry about this whole marginal revenue curve and everything, I don't think. But, like I made a bunch of notes about it. Okay, let's get past it. I think it's just too much. So don't worry about all that. But I'll leave it in there in case it makes sense if you want to look at it. But yeah, I think just the characteristics is enough to cover it. They can improve profits by reducing costs. Anyone could, but they can also increase demand, unlike in pure competition. So, you know, they can advertise, they can promote. I don't see anything really testable with that. There's no normal market forces on setting the price. Governments will often impose some regulation that restricts it. Monopolies tend to spend a lot of money on lobbying and public relations. But I think that's the meat here. Any questions? Oh, we didn't do this one, did we? Oops. Got distracted by my story. All right, so let's do monopoly while we're just talking about it. In a perfect monopoly, which of the following describes the relationship? That one, I think, maybe just a little too far. I don't know. You know, Becker didn't get into all of this, but Gleim did. So I don't know. But marginal revenue curve is below. So we'll mark it, but we won't spend a lot of time worrying about it unless you just want to. In the long run, the monopolistic firm produces at the quantity that maximizes revenue. Will the firm use resources efficiently or inefficiently? And will its price be higher or lower in a competitive environment? All right, so the book talks about all this efficient and inefficient use of resources. A monopoly is very inefficient in using its resources. So they're on that end of it. In pure competition, that's the most efficient use of resources. So that's two ends of the spectrum. Now, the idea here with a monopoly is, you know, more of society is interested in buying whatever their product is, but a monopoly is going to sell the lower quantity at a higher price, right, than would be the case in a perfectly competitive market. So that's kind of the idea behind their inefficient use of resources. Monopoly price. Number 3, which of the following is the shape of the demand curve faced by a monopolistic firm? Basic question, but important. It's negatively sloped. Price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. You know, it's a horizontal demand curve in pure competition or perfect competition. It's negatively sloped in the other 3. The oligopoly has a kink in it, but they're all negatively sloped except for pure competition. Number 4, in a perfect monopoly market structure, which of the following is a characteristic of a natural monopoly? So natural monopoly, we're thinking big old fixed costs, hard to get going on this. So that would be increasing returns to scale. That doesn't seem like the obvious answer to this one, but
You would think it would be that. Not particularly like the previous, the number 3. I didn't get what it's not, for example.
So we're on monopoly. I
Yes.
skip perfect competition.
Yes, so if it's monopoly,
So
it doesn't matter how the price will change.
so the demand curve. So say I have a monopoly on the iPhone. All right, you want one of those. What if I price that thing at $2,000? How many of y'all can buy that? Not as many as if I price it at $500, right? So the more I jack the price up of that, which a monopolist can do, the fewer people will be able to do it.
But in a perfect competition, They couldn't jack up the price to someone that's.
Yeah, in perfect competition, everybody's selling the same thing. The market price is what it is. Somebody goes up just a little bit, nobody's gonna buy from them. So that's the horizontal line. And those are important concepts for sure.
That's really helpful when you do the, tax and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things are kind of fun.
So it's fun.
I think kind of fun.
Once you figure it out, it's not so bad.
Which of the following could be the basis for a natural monopoly? Again, it's the same idea. Big old operations, big old fixed costs, high startup costs, big economies of scale. It makes sense for only one company to be doing what's being done. Let's back up to perfect competition. I skipped those questions. Which of the following is not a characteristic of perfect competition? A says a large number of buyers and sellers. That's definitely a characteristic. All firms sell the same thing. Yep. Each selling firm is too small to affect price. Yep. It says firms cannot easily enter or leave the market. That is the thing that's not true. That would be true for a monopoly, if not for this thing. In the short run, a firm in perfect competition will cease to produce when which of the following conditions exists. A says if price that we're selling for is less than average variable cost, we're done, right? That's the case for anything. If we're selling for less than variable cost of making, we're done. So there you go. Number 3, which is following the shape of the demand curve, horizontal, important, basic but important. We talked about it. 4 more characteristics. Which of the following is assumed in a perfectly competitive financial market? A says no single trader or traders can have a significant impact on market prices. That's true.
This is one of those where like you get 4 A's in a row and you start to question. Like you should think of it or not.
Yeah, I found that you never should question that because I've put tests together where it's like I had like 7 of the same letter in a row.
You did that on one of the interviews.
I didn't do it on purpose.
I'll never forget. All of us were like, I thought we were just wrong.
I didn't do it on purpose. It just naturally fell that way.
I was wondering, have you ever done that on purpose?
No, I'm not trying to trick people into answering wrong. I'm on y'all's team. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. Number 5, always any of these. What's the best level of output? Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. All right. Looks like we'll get through these other 2 before time to go. So monopolistic competition, that's the thing that's common where we are. So it's kind of easy to visualize what's going on with this. Large number of sellers. Firms sell similar goods, but not identical. They can differentiate somewhat. So, think Target and Walmart. They're kind of selling the same thing, but we all love Target more, right? So they've differentiated a little bit. Firms can easily enter or leave the market. So these are all characteristics of kind of what we've got going on. Downward sloping demand curve, just like the others, except for perfect competition. Highly elastic. Price has a big effect because very similar goods, start pricing it up, people are going to go elsewhere. Again, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. This is all there to look at, but again, probably a little too much. Firms tend to differentiate their product or service. So yeah, just think about things you're familiar with as you think about these types of things. With this type of thing, I think like Walmart, Target. With Monopoly, I think of somebody like, even though it's not Monopoly, I think of somebody like Apple or something. The iPhone. Do what?
Do it on 115. iOS.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you know, there's competitors, but
We're here with patent.
yeah, they do.
Is there anything with the patent? No.
Yeah, I guess they would have a monopoly on some things for sure. Yeah. So yeah, there you go. Not a lot to say. What are our questions? There's that one again.
So we're there, sitting down.
They love it. Which of the following is a characteristic of monopolistic competition? Few sellers, no. Slightly differentiated product or service, that's the one. Demand curve is negative. Any of them except pure competition. Which of the following statements is correct? All products are homogeneous. Not entirely, right? They're slightly differentiated, so A wouldn't work. B says there are barriers to entry in the market. That's not true. That'd be true for a monopoly, and it'd be true for an oligopoly too, but not for this. People can come and go. C says firms can make economic profits in the short run. And D says firms can make economic profits in the long run. This one gets maybe a little too deep, but I think I made a note about it. I didn't. Yeah. No, I really didn't, did I? But whatever. So in the long run, the economic profits of all firms is going to be zero because firms will enter a profitable industry and leave an unprofitable one. So there will be long run equilibrium. I kind of got at that in a roundabout way with that question, but I think this theory maybe it's important or not. I don't know. It's hard for me to know for sure if this is too deep. My background is not economics, so I can't judge quite as well as I can the accounting questions on what they might ask and what they might not. But I guess you can reason through it anyway. Firms can certainly make economic profits in the short run. Why couldn't they, right? But in the long run, in theory, in this type of market, it should kind of reach a little equilibrium where all firms have an economic profit of zero because firms are entering profitable ones and leaving unprofitable ones.
One thing about those is like getting out of the accounting mindset.
It is tricky sometimes, yeah. Yeah,
It's like we think short term they might not have an accounting problem.
Mm-hmm.
But even in accounting, it says in the long run, they will not have revenue like profits because there will be more competition, and the prices will go down to the point that they'll just break even.
And basically, it's like there's a possibility in the short run of economic profit, which we said is the case. But in the long run, somebody's going to see that and they're going to be like, ooh, there's an opportunity. So they're going to jump in there. Firms are going to have to say, oh no, there's a new person. We need to differentiate our product more so we can compete with them, which is going to make our costs go up. And then the higher costs are going to chip away at those economic profits that they've been earning. And then the worst of the bunch are going to have to leave. And then the remaining firms are back down to normal profits, that concept of normal profits where they're zero. So I don't know, that may be too deep of a question, but it may not. I don't know. There it is again. They like it. Same concept. Short run profit, yes. Long run, no. So probably worth taking a note of. I don't know. Number 6, which of the following statements is correct regarding variety and price of products produced under monopolistic competition as compared to perfect competition? So we can think about this without reading, greater variety, they're differentiating. And then saying price in the question, cost in the answers. It'll be higher regardless. So greater variety, but obviously differentiating a product comes at a higher cost. And higher cost would lead to a higher price and whatever.
So that would be a perfect competition. It would be perfect.
If the question was what is true about perfect competition,
Oh, all right, my bad. That was part of it.
okay. Okay. One more, oligopoly. This one's kind of fun. So this is a few people all at each other's throats, pretty much. There's a few sellers. They could sell a standardized product or differentiated product. It could go either way. And there's restricted entry into the market. So there's our characteristics. Definitely need to know that it's just a few sellers. A few sellers, probably very large sellers that are all aware of each other and all aware of what they're all doing and responding to moves by each of their competitors as far as pricing and advertising, things like that. Restricted entry into the market for sure. So, if one, there may be a dominant firm of the bunch, and they may make a decision, the others kind of follow. One firm lowers prices, others are likely to follow. So they tend to compete on factors other than price. So quality, service, things like that. If they want to change prices without triggering a price war, they may work together. Collusion, so overt collusion, which is them all getting together and saying, hey, let's do this, is illegal. That would be referred to as a cartel if they were doing that. Word we're familiar with, right?
Sounds bad.
It just sounds bad, right? You hear cartel, and it's bad. Tacit collusion, on the other hand, is not illegal. That's kind of a thing that kind of naturally happens. You got a dominant group person in the group, and they might raise their prices or lower their prices, and the others will follow. So that's not illegal. It just kind of happens in a somewhat natural way. Downward slope curve, but kinked. And there's some arguments about that, the theoretical soundness of that. So that being the case, maybe not a test question on it. It's an interesting idea, though. They've got a demand curve that's negatively sloping, but there's a kink that occurs at what the established price is. Prices are elastic above the kink. Prices are raised, more customers are being lost. Inelastic below the kink, because if prices are lower, others will lower the price and won't gain a disproportionate share of known customers. It'll be a price war. Anyway, and they tend, it says, to underallocate resources to production, produce less, charge more, kind of like a monopoly. So they have inefficient use of resources like a monopoly does. Not as inefficient, but yes, very inefficient. Most of our questions dealt with the idea of collusion and stuff. A group of firms that conspires is a cartel, which of the following is not a characteristic of an oligopoly market. They do face a downward sloping demand curve, whether there's a kink in it or not, it's still downward sloping. There are barriers to enter the market. They do tend to compete on non-price factors, and then you're worried, you're mad at yourself for not reading them all first without thinking about them, because these obviously the answer is one you don't even have to think about. Which of the following sets correctly describes these characteristics of an oligopoly? Few sellers, difficult entry into the market, obviously. which of the following pricing policies results in establishment of a price to external customers higher than the competitive price for a given industry? So that would happen from these. We know it's not transfer pricing. That's an accounting thing we did. Predatory pricing, y'all know what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
Firm sees the price of another person, and then just automatically goes to the lower.
That would be more like a price war.
That's a collusion. No, that's not that's a collusion.
So predatory price. So the answer to this, by the way, is
Isn't it partly like if like a natural disaster happened, all of a sudden you increase like the cost of water? Is that like kind of predatory stuff?
Is
Something that's essential.
there a term for that?
There is a term for it.
I wonder. Predatory pricing, there's got to be a term for that, and that might be a term they use for that too. But what predatory pricing is a company sets their price so low that the other firm can't compete and they get forced out of the market. So they kind of eat them alive by setting their prices really low. I wonder if they might, it sounds like a term they could use for what you described too. I wonder.
It's like one of like all the people go down, they make a bunch of laws.
Oh, wait.
Gouging.
Gouging, yeah. Okay. I wasn't going to come up with that, but something came to my mind, but it wasn't that. Nice. Yeah, gouging. But yeah, this is collusive pricing. That would lead to a higher price. They're not going to get together and charge a lower price, right? They're going to get together and say, hey, let's all put our prices higher. So if the three of us do this, not a fourth that's competing with us. 5 says there's an air route between 2 cities served by only 3 U.S. airlines. Every week, the largest of the 3 airlines posts its prices for future flights on the internet, and the 2 other airlines immediately match it. This illustrates which is passive collusion. They're not getting together and conspiring. You've got one leading the way and the others following. Price leadership would be another term for this. The other businesses just kind of accept the price changes set by the dominant firm and follow. It's an unwritten thing, though. It's an understanding overtly, the openly agreeing. Number 6, oligopolistic. That's the word. Firms are less likely to collude when A says the firm's cost structures are more similar. B says there are fewer firms in the industry. C says general economic conditions are recessionary. D says the firm's products are standardized. That would be, this would be the case. They would least likely collude. Their cost structures are similar. We're all in the same boat. Let's just all do the same thing together. If there are fewer firms, they're easier to communicate with each other. If their products are the same, again, they're all kind of in it together. If there's bad economic conditions, though, you got decreased demand out there, might trigger a price war. That's trying to gain market share. All right. Oh, and then we had a little summary of the market structures, which just took everything we've said and put it in a nice, neat little section. Nothing new to talk about, but we do have some more questions that are quite easy. Which of the following market structures are firms most likely to avoid price competition for fear of creating a price war? That would be an oligopoly. Those are the ones that would be in a price war. Monopoly's got nobody to go to war with, and there's too many sellers in the others to have that. Number 2, which of the following market structures is there the greatest incentive, and it is the most feasible for firms to agree or engage in collusion? I'll go with oligopoly again. Which of the following market structures is least likely to be found in any industry in the U.S.? That's that theoretical perfect competition thing. In which of the following market structures, if any, is a firm assured of making a profit in the short run? Nobody's ever assured of making a profit. So that'd be no all the way across the board. Number 5, price discrimination is effectively, so price discrimination is a term where it describes you're selling to different groups for different prices. Discrimination, right? So that would be effective if there are distinct segments of consumers. And that is it. And that is all of microeconomics. How about that? We covered some stuff. Pretty comfortable with it though? Yeah, I think so.
I feel better about this stuff than I did the public now.
A lot less crunching of numbers with this.
It's really a lot more memorization.
Yeah, and maybe not so much memorization, it's just kind of familiarization. Yeah. Once you get it, you got it. Yeah, kind of logical. All right, so it's time for us to think about whether any of us wants to do nothing really worthwhile in any of these. Did y'all find anything that you thought might be worthwhile in those?
It was really
Common sense or useless? Yeah. Interesting maybe, but not for our CPA exam. Yeah. Yeah. If this was a class where we were trying to talk about things like that, we could have fun talking about those things, but we're trying to get CPA exam squared away in here, so none of that matters. Now, getting on down to these, starting with this macro environmental analysis, some of that is a little important. Those Porter's 5 forces, I think you had a question about to what extent do we need to know that. That shows up in all 3 of the books. I don't know that you would need to memorize those 5, but
We have the question about pestle.
yeah.
We need to know that.
I mean, you see it once and it's hard to forget, but I don't feel like I think it was legal or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was like, okay.
Yep. You just see it once. It's like, well, I don't think so. I think it's a little too deep. The EL part of it is. In fact, I don't even know how important the whole pest thing would be, but possibly enough to where I would note it and kind of carry it with me just in case.
I feel like they like those types of the abbreviations, like they like this type of stuff.
Oh yeah. You could be
Like
right.
comparing to like strategies, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don't need steer.
Steer.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that one. I guess not. I remember smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steer.
Steer.
Yeah.
I don't remember steer. I really skimmed those. I got really tired of reading those. I'm like, this is useless. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think any question you get using any of that kind of knowledge, you would know automatically anyway, unless they flat out said, which of these is not part of steer? You know, I could shoot. But it's one question. I don't think it's going to show up though. I really don't. I do think Porter's 5 is important. I do think that the pest thing could be SWOT. I'd say definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, we're familiar with that. You knew what that was before you read about it. And I even put SMART in there. Probably didn't need to, but I did. And SMART. But yeah, I don't think anything here is super duper vital. So yeah, these SWOT questions are pretty good. So yeah, some good familiarity with that is not a bad idea. Which of the following of these matrix relationships is the worst? Strength, opportunity, strength, threat, weakness, threat. I mean, it's obvious, right? Weakness with a threat. That'd be the worst case, right? And they spell that out a little better right here. And I made notes of it, even though it's kind of obvious. The S and the O is using strengths to take advantages of opportunities. Weakness with opportunity is pursuing opportunities to overcome weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. But with weakness and threat, you're just trying to find a way to prevent the weakness from being overcome by your threats. That's the worst case, right? In SWOT, is SWOT analysis concerned with external environment, internal characteristics, or both? It's both. It's kind of the relationship between each, how they fit together. Good questions for number 3 too. A regulatory agency has been considering imposing stricter regulations on an industry. Under SWOT, the possibility of this new regulation would be considered a threat, right? I can see that as a question. Which of the following would be least likely to be a possible threat to an entity? Decreasing trade barriers is a good thing, right? Which of the following would not be an entity's strength in a competitive environment? This is not a strength. Significant unmet needs, that would be an opportunity, right? Having patent rights would be a strength. Favorable reputation would be a strength. Favorable location would be a strength. Unmet needs in the market is not a strength of yours, but it's an opportunity to take advantage of the thing. Which of the following is directly concerned with the relationship? Analysis. So all those are fine.
You're right. This
All right, working capital. We know what the definition of working capital is: current assets minus current liabilities. A big takeaway with any of these accounts, receivables, inventory, cash, you want just the right amount. You want not too much and not too little of any of it. Too little, you're not going to be able to meet the needs that you have. Too much is you're not managing it very well. Too much cash is not a good thing. You don't want to have idle cash sitting around. Too much receivables is a red flag. Too much inventory is a bad deal. It costs money to store inventory. Inventory can go obsolete. So there you go. This whole idea of a current ratio divided by current liabilities, higher is better, is kind of crap, right? Higher is not necessarily better. Higher is good up to a point. Too high is bad, right? I wrote a whole research paper on that and got published about how current ratio is not really that great. So it's kind of neat. Anyway, that's the whole point with all this short-term working capital stuff. You want the right amount, not too much, not too little. Cash management, they go into each one. They had all this discussion about accelerating collections and delaying paying it off. So it's worth a read through. I don't know how much notes you want to take. I think you get the idea pretty quick as you read through it. Pre-authorized checks, pre-authorized charges, remote deposits, lockbox systems, all these ways to speed up your collecting cash, more efficient cash collections, delay paying as long as possible. That's pretty much cash management right there, right? I don't know where that line item came from. Number 2 in that was interesting. More of the same though, where you're I don't know if it's so much more the same. Let's look at it. So the firm, sorry, firm has daily cash receipts of $100,000. Collection time is 4 days. Banks offer to reduce their collection time by 2 days by using a lockbox arrangement for a monthly fee of $500. If rates are expected to average 6% per year, they could invest that idle cash and earn 6%. What is the net annual benefit or cost from having this? Now, the thing about this question that stinks is they needed to make those negative numbers in the question. It ends up being a net, not benefit, but a cost. So the answer ends up being 3,000, but it really should be negative 3,000 by the way they worded that. That's what it should be. So that's the answer. And that's what had me kind of irritated for a while, because I kept coming up with, it's not a benefit, it's a cost. I'm like, I bet that they meant for that to be a cost number, and I clicked it and submitted it and it was fine. So I wasted a lot of time with it. But here's the deal. What are you getting?
Okay, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
And
This
I got
one.
it minus 3,000, I'm like, well, it's 2,000.
Yeah.
2,000.
That's kind of where I ended up. Like, well, I'm just going to stick with the 3,000. But yeah, I ended up being irritated by this. But your benefit is $100,000 invested at 6%. And this is probably not the most efficient way to work through this, but this was my thought process. Is 2 out of 360 days, $33.33 times 360 days. I went on this, and that's how I ended up doing it. Easier would have been just saying 100,000 times 2 days times 6%. I went in a circle on it, but that's I sat on this one for a while.
So what did you use for 360?
It's standard, yeah. That always kind of annoyed me, but yeah, it's standard unless they tell you use a 365 day. It's just 12.
Most of the problems it'll say 360
Yeah,
or 365.
it's 12 30-day months. Yeah, it's just one of those standard things. I always was annoyed by it when I was first seeing that. I'm like, why? There's more than that. There's 5 more days. So I don't know. So that's the benefit, $100,000, 2 days quicker, 6% interest on that. So that's the benefit. The cost is $500 per month times 12 months. Oh wait, it is a benefit. What am I doing? I think I got so messed up on this one. It did end up being a benefit. I don't know why I said it was a cost.
There was one that was like that, though, I remember.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
And maybe not on this section, but at some point it's like, that's, if you're looking for something that's negative, it's not.
Oh, it's not 3,000 either. It's 6,000. I think I was thinking of a different problem or something. Sorry.
So is that 2 days that you have the simplified form? Is that supposed to be like 2 over 360 times the 6%?
Don't even look at this mess I did up here. I went
An
in,
easier method.
yeah, I went in a big old circle. Yeah, daily cash receipts 100,000, 2 days quicker, 6%.
So I guess you also applying that by 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah. I must be thinking of a different question where it was a cost, or maybe I just got so screwed up in the head on this one that I was thinking something different, but yeah, 3,000 was, I don't know why. I don't know. It's 6,000. It's a benefit. It was written fine.
It's almost Friday.
It's almost Friday and it's 8:07. I've been at it since 6:30. I'm pretty much fried. So float is a good term to know. Y'all know what a float is. But 4 I just stuck on there because this is definitely a good tool, and it kind of is in a nutshell what all this working capital management is about. Over cash anyway. Will efficient practices seek to increase or decrease receipt float and disbursement float? So float's just the time between it starting from wherever and it coming to, being collected by somebody else. So receipt float would be the time between them sending payment to you and you getting it. Disbursement float would be the time between you mailing it and them getting it and it clearing the bank, right? So we want to obviously so float is the period of time, right? That's what's tricky about this. And that's really why I put it on there, because it's like, oh, I want to increase my receipt. It's like, but they're talking about the float. You want to decrease the time, decrease the float on receipts, right? You want to increase the time it's floating out there on your disbursement. The longer it floats, the better. The longer you still have the cash. I thought that was an interesting little question, so I stuck it on there. So there you go. Moving along. Short-term securities management. Sharp ratio is in there. Throw that out. I've never encountered the Sharp ratio. I'm very confident that you don't have to worry about that one. Somebody's going to come back and say, I had a Sharp ratio question on my consent. Sorry, I won't say that again then, but I really don't think you need to know it. Probably not even coefficient of variation, but I mean, it's a good statistics thing, and it's easy. It's your, standard deviation divided by the average rate of return, but even that I don't think is probably that big of a deal. Maybe not. I didn't have any questions that I took note of on this one. Commercial paper showed up again. Seems to like to show up in questions. Treasury bills are the safest investment as far as risk goes. And those were all easy questions, so I kind of left them. Accounts receivable management. I took no notes on that, believe it or not. It was all just kind of obvious things. So I don't see anything worth making a note of. I did grab a couple of questions. This is kind of a cash budgeting question more than anything on number 1 in a way, but easy enough to reason through. Company has credit sales of $20,000 in January, $30,000 in February, $50,000 in March. They collect 75% in the month where the sale happens, 25% the following month. What's our receivables balance looking like at March 31st? Like, well, what have I not collected as of March 31st? January is all collected by February. February is all collected by March. So the only thing outstanding is whatever March I hadn't collected yet. So 50,000 March sales not yet collected. That would be the 25% that's still out there. So 12,500 could very well be a question.
Really?
Sure. More along the line budgeting. This would have been more appropriate in the budgeting section in cost accounting, in my opinion.
This one
It's easy. Yeah. You might would get a little more complex one where collections span over 2 different months. So you just have to pick up.
in my mind, when I read it, I wanted to make sure I did it right, so I
Uh-huh.
did each month. And
Yep.
I was like, when I finished, I was like, that was so dumb.
No,
But
it's,
it was fun.
yeah, it's good practice.
It's easy.
That's the point of all this, is just to kind of reason through it all. And you're better for doing it that way. Overall this was good. The overall objective of accounts receivables. The overall objective is to maximize profits. Yeah, we're trying to minimize credit losses and minimize uncollectible accounts. Same thing, by the way. But by doing that, ultimately, the ultimate goal is creating wealth, right? If that was a question or an answer, that would have been the choice. But maximizing profits, right? Minimizing credit losses, which leads to less bad debt expense, which leads to more profits, right? So overall, maximize profits. What was this one? I have a note that this was too easy. Oh, this is the one. This is the one where the answer choice needs to be this. Now I see why I did that earlier, because it was 3,000 on top. I guess I just got ahead of myself. Okay, I feel better about myself now. All right, Mo's Boat Service. Oh, Mo. Is thinking about offering a 2% discount to improve its cash conversion cycle, how quickly it collects cash. Cash conversion cycle is a big ratio that comes up later. Anyway, credit sales are expected to be $1 million. 2% discounts expected to be taken on 40% of receivables. That will decrease our balance on receivables by $30,000 on average throughout. Opportunity cost is 15% associated with the use of its cash. Which of the following is the dollar amount of net benefit or cost that they would obtain if they implement this 2% discount plan? So what are we doing? We are losing what? We got $1 million of credit sales. We think 40% of the people are going to take advantage of that discount, and that is a 2% discount. So we are losing $8,000 by doing this. So 40% of that $1 million credit sales, they're saying, hey, I'll take that 2% discount, and that's $8,000 we're not going to get. But we're getting money quicker, so there's a benefit to that. We can invest it and earn 15%. I started making this a lot more difficult at first, but really all there, and mine needs to be a little more clear, but we are gaining the use of that $30,000 on average. So we are gaining $30,000 that we can invest and earn 15%. For the year, we're gaining $4,500. Overall, we are losing $3,500. That's why it should have been negative in my opinion. Or they should have said, what's the amount of the cost? That would have been fine. But the fact that they said net benefit or cost, they need a negative number there or lose the whole net benefit thing.
I guess in my one, they didn't click because it said the accounts receivable decrease by $30,000. So in my mind, that is like,
Yeah, decreased receivable means you have debited cash and credited receivables. Yeah. So that's cash you can invest somewhere else. Yeah. It's a good question, other than the answer choices. All right. We're almost done here. Inventory management. Economic order quantity is actually pretty important. So that we need, kind of need to. So I have too many notes here, but it's such a new idea, and it is covered in all three test preps. pretty thoroughly. So I kind of added some additional notes just to kind of give us the complete information. So the point they make is the decision you're making is how often to order, how much to order, and there's a trade-off in ordering often and ordering. You can order every day and order a little and be a lot of ordering costs, but not as much carrying costs. Or you can order very few times, but order a lot at a time. So less ordering costs, more carrying costs. We're looking to find the best time to order, how many to order and how often. So the trade-off, larger the quantity ordered, the lower the cost per unit. Larger the quantity ordered, the longer you have to wait and carry it, and there's higher carrying costs. What order size will minimize total cost of inventory? And then I added some more notes here at the bottom. So it answers how many to order and how often. I actually repeated myself on this one, but whatever. And I threw in some conceptual stuff. It ignores stock out costs, not being able to meet demand with the current inventory level. It doesn't give you that information, so you have to make sure that you're not running out of inventory and not able to meet demand, right? It's not concerned with product costs, it's concerned with ordering costs. So remember that. And then some things about, you could see that by plugging numbers into the formula if there was a conceptual question. As demand goes up, order quantity goes up, inventory order costs go up, order quantity goes up, those kind of things to know, but you can crunch numbers and figure all that out. So I threw a couple of examples in. So in formula, you can remember what those letters stand for. The formula is easy to remember. Square root of 2 SOC. 2 SOC. Kind of the easier way to remember that. 2 SOC. Do what? Yeah, I tried to make that an S. S. Yeah, there's no way to make it look like a, but that's what it is. So that's your formula. So it's 2 times the total demand times the cost per order divided by the carrying cost per unit. That's the problem. It's an easy little formula to write, 2 SOC and remember, but the hard part is what do those variables stand for in the first place? That's the difficult part. So what's better is just to work through some of it. But S is unit sales. If you want to do it that way, let me write this out. Unit sales, yes, per order, or not per order, per year. Demand. O is ordering cost per order. Sounds funny, but I'm going to specify ordering cost per order, not ordering cost per year, right? C is carrying cost per unit per year. All right, now let's do it because it'll make a lot more sense. So the company faces an annual demand of 2,000 units. It costs the company $1,000 for every order placed and $250 per unit of the product. It faces a carrying cost of 10% of a unit cost. What is the economic order quantity? All right, so they give us information, a little bit of tweaking we have to do. Let's see. All right, well, there's a 2 here. That's part of the formula. 2 SOC. S is unit sales per year. All right, company faces annual demand of 2,000 units. That is unit sales per year. All right. to SOC. Ordering cost per order. Company, $1,000 for every order. Divided by carrying cost per unit for the year. That's the number they don't give us. They say that carrying cost is 10% of unit cost. So 10% of $250 unit cost. So 25. All right. Now, you got to have a calculator that can handle a square root to do this. Or it's got to give you a number that you can eyeball and say, oh, I know the square root of that. So what do we got? 2 times 2,000 times 1,000 equals 4 million. Divided by 25 is 160,000. 400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. It was somewhere in there.
So square root of 160,000. 400 units. All right. But we're not quite done. That solves the formula. Thousand units divided by 400 unit batches equals 5 orders this year. And that's the complete information. That's the main thing right there, but there's some more to it. So 400 units means we're going to be ordering 5 times this year. Those are the 2 things we're looking for. How much to order and how often. Not too bad. Here's another one. Down here. So, the John Sports Incorporated purchases tennis balls at $20 per dozen from its suppliers. They will sell they will sell 34,300 dozens of tennis balls evenly throughout the year. Total cost to handle a purchase order is $10. Insurance, property tax, and rent, in other words, carrying costs. For each average inventory is $1.40. What is your economic order quantity? All right, so remember to solve. Remember, the hardest part is remembering what each of those variables actually means. All right, so you got the 2. S is unit sales per year, demand, sales. So demand here is 34,300. Forget the dozens in that. It's 34,300.
So would they not use the word dozens?
Huh?
Would they not use the word dozens, like in a CPA question?
They could, but you could ignore it.
Because in my mind, I would think.
You start
need to
multiplying by
multiply.
12.
Yeah.
You would probably
Or,
have the answer choices
Right,
as
that's what I was
blank
thinking.
dozen. No, they probably wouldn't throw. I don't think I've never seen any other problem that did this with the dozens. Yeah, it's just the
World doesn't. Would not this be 34,300 dozen? Well, you won't say 4 dozen.
they blue underlined it, but they didn't red underline it.
I'll take for nothing to say.
They grammar checked us on it, but they didn't. I don't know. They didn't spell check us. Ordering cost per order is what we need up here. So that's the O. Cost of an order, I marked it out kind of, it's $10. And then we're dividing by the carrying cost per unit. So Our unit is a dozen, so the insurance, tax, rent for each dozen is $1.40. And the rest of it's just crunching the numbers. They gotta make the calculator so gigantic. You don't need it to be that big. There we go. 2 times 34,300 times 10 divided by 1.4 is 490. So square root of 490 would be 700.
At least they do keep it pretty high.
Yeah.
And then it's not like a weird, so not even thinking what I.
Yeah. And you can use it on the calculator. Basic calculators have square root on it, but even if you didn't feel comfortable doing that, you can look at your answer choices and square them and see. So yeah, 700 units. So that'd be the right answer, but carrying it a little farther, 34,300, 49 orders this year. So there you go, economic order quantity.
So the answer when it's asking economic order quantity would be 49.
It'd be 700.
Can I ask something? So this 49 orders means how many orders a year he needs to have?
Well, it's just more complete information. If I tell you order 700 units each time, that's what you need to know. And it just so happens that it's going to require you to order 49 times this year. The formula's crunching out how many quantity in an order. And then from that, we can kind of deduce it's like, oh, okay, well, 49 orders.
How many times in each order he can do it each year?
Yeah. Anytime you work that formula, you've got both pieces of information automatically. Well, not automatically, but yeah, you can figure it out. Okay, so that's economic order quantity. Reorder point. Simple, take the time it takes to deliver number of units. The formula they have is delivery time stock plus safety stock. What does delivery time stock mean? It's the number of units sold during the time it takes to deliver, which also isn't that clear. Is it? Let's work one that's a lot clearer. How did this come down here? Go right there. We go. Which of the following is not a characteristic of just in time? We know, but it's like, that's important. I'll stick it in there. What are we not trying to do with just in time inventory? We're not going to be decreasing the number of deliveries. Just in time means we're ordering as we need it, which obviously means we're going to have a whole bunch more deliveries. And that does kind of deal with the whole idea of economic order quantity, right? So, worth mentioning. Which of the following inventory management approaches seeks to minimize total inventory costs by considering both the restocking or reordering costs and carrying costs? Just been putting into words what we just did there. That could very well be a CPA question. That could be the extent of which you're tested on economic order quantity. I thought it was a good question, so I stuck it on there. In computing the reorder point for an item of inventory, which of the following factors are used? So this is that. In fact, this is all they gave us on the whole reorder point. So putting that in a little better words, reorder point. Number of units sold in the time it takes to deliver. have a period of time, and that's how long, that's kind of where we start. How long does it take them to deliver this to me? Well, how many units are going to be sold in that time? That's the planning you're going to have to take. You're going to have to be sure and order before that period of time, right? Like, it takes a week. I usually sell 1,000 in a week, so I don't want to wait till I have 1,000 units on hand to order if I sell 1,000 in a week, because I'm going to be cutting it close. But that's kind of your starting point. Number of units sold and the time it takes to deliver, plus your safety stock to give you a little cushion there. So in computing the reorder point, which of the following factors are used? Cost of inventory? No, that's not part of this. We're just looking at unit sales and time, right? We're looking at inventory usage per day. Yeah, we want to know how many units are sold each day so we can figure out how many units are sold and the time it takes for them to deliver, and figure out how quickly I need to do this. So yes. Acquisition lead time, yes, again, in the time it takes to deliver. So 2 and 3. So that's more of a concept than a formula, really, even though it's kind of written as a formula. And then here's an economic order quantity question that is kind of stupid, easy. As a consequence of finding more dependable supplier and adopting just in time, this company has reduced its safety stock of raw materials inventory by 80%. Which of the following would the reduction in safety stock have on their economic order quantity? Reducing safety stock wouldn't fit into the economic order quantity formula, right? So no change. What are we considering an economic order quantity? Nothing to do with the safety stock on hand, right? We're looking at demand for our product, cost per order, carrying cost per units, and all of that. Doing something, it's kind of like a sunk idea here. So no change. And then number 5, which are the following characteristics of the primary benefit of just in time? We're eliminating non-value added things such as carrying cost of inventory, right? Storing inventory, moving inventory from storage and all that kind of stuff. We're doing it right. It comes in after we order it and goes straight to the floor, right? Hit us with a lot of just in time. One more section and then we'll hit the road, which is good because we only have 8 minutes. Current liabilities management. I took 0 notes, so nothing really worth getting into. For our ratios discussion down to the bottom here. All right, well, nothing really to take note of. I do have 5 questions from it though, but they're all the same old thing. Just on the liability side of things, here's a 210 net 45 situation. They bought goods on March 1st. If they pay the invoice on April 10th, which is way after the discount period, how much are they going to pay? They're going to pay the whole thing, right? No discount. So they would have to pay the whole 1,000. I guess the lesson there is be careful. Don't automatically think the setups means they took the discount. Look at the dates, right? Discount, not. There's another APR thing, more and more of the same. But this one's it throws a little bit of a curveball on us because it's a 6-month deal. So let's look at it. They're considering a short-term loan of $100,000. Bank offered a $180 or 180-day loan for an annual rate of 7%. $10,000 compensating balance has to be maintained. if they do this using a 360-day year, what is their APR? All right, so figure out how much interest they had to pay. They had to pay $100,000 times 7% times half a year. Yeah, just making sure. So $3,500 interest. That's what they had to pay. What were they able to use? So they had to pay $35 on $90,000. So here's where you have to be careful, because every other time we just said, all right, 3,500, 90,000. We had to pay 3.89%. But look, they're asking annual. That 3.89% is for 180 days. Half a year. Whoa, what happened? So that's for half a year. So it's really 7.78% for the year. So good little question here. That's the kind of thing they'll mess with you on. Yep.
I did the half year, and then,
Yep. So yeah, be careful on that kind of thing. And then, the rest of these, this is that whole same deal again, where we convert that to an annual rate. So we won't do all that calculation, but that ends up being about 36%. It ends up being about 18%. That ends up being about 14.5%, really 0.4 the way I did it. So you end up wanting to do this. Purchase from A and B companies, because that's the biggest APR. And then this one goes back to that whole, what they call the hedging principle, where you're trying to increase inventory. How would you finance it? Or an asset, finance with short-term liability. So you would want to issue long-term debt. You would want to issue equity to cover inventory increase, right? And then number 5, same idea as number 4. Short-term liabilities would be appropriately used to finance with the following: not a fixed asset, not paying off long-term debt, yes to buy inventory, not to buy a patent. And number 6 was the same thing again. They really like that hedging principle thing. So